Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 12 of the Current Review podcast. Today, we have on an extremely special guest. We have Chris Anthony, the co-CEO of Aptera, probably, in my opinion, one of the coolest EV startups around. And there's just so much to talk about. It's a beautiful car, incredibly aerodynamic. I think it is probably, I would say it's an engineer's dream, just in terms of efficiency, incredibly efficient. So I would love to talk about that in a lot of depth. But before we get to that, Chris, you've been in the EV industry for such an extensive period. And with the first Aptera, that was actually pre-Tesla. So just with your experience in batteries as well, what are like some of your biggest insights you've gained about the EV industry working in here?
It's an evolving industry. So, I think the big thing about the EV industry is it's not evolving the way I thought it would. I thought that as energy became more precious and we started to push electrons versus burning petroleum, that people would see every electron as sacred and you would want to make the most efficient vehicles ever. And, these rolling houses just wouldn't be a thing anymore. But you see today, the Dodge Charger EV wants to be the most powerful, EV ever. It's going to burn 900 watt hours per mile. We're going to burn rubber in our new EV. And you got like the GM Hummer EV that's, rolling house and using, 10 times the amount of energy as the Aptera does per mile. I didn't think that it would kind of evolve the way it has. I thought that everybody would be focused on lightweighting, super efficient rolling resistance tires, and, certainly aerodynamics would be creeping in, but just hasn't gone that way. So we hope that, we really stand out in the crowd of EV people in that we're focused solely on efficiency. Every electron to us is precious, and we want to, use Mother Earth's energy as well as we can. We don't want to build a vehicle that's heavy and bloated and uses a lot of aluminum and nickel and steel and, petroleum products in the composites. 2,200 pound vehicle, 100 watt hours per mile. If you're that efficient, 350 miles per gallon equivalent, then you can do great things like solar power it, and it can be really quick with DC fast charge. And obviously, you can sell it for a lot less because the components that it takes to make a vehicle like that just cost a lot less. So, the landscape of vehicles getting more and more expensive. The average EV is over 60 grand now. So, we come in with a base price of $26,000 for a base Aptera, and we think that that's a great place to be.
So more of a philosophical icebreaker, but why do you think that is in the industry? What do you think is the allure with large vehicles?
That's a good question. Part of it is, the American sense of freedom is always, more capable vehicles, not less capable vehicles. So it's always kind of an arms race to have the most capable, fattest, biggest tires, off-road capable vehicles ever. So many off-road trucks, sold today, SUVs with four-wheel drive, where the owners never, through the full ownership of the vehicle, put it into four-wheel drive. But, maybe it's everybody's planning for the zombie apocalypse. But I tell you now, if the zombie apocalypse happens, you want an Aptera, because the gas stations will be dead and the power won't be flowing. And the only thing that's going to be driving is your solar-powered dream machine, Aptera, that can fend off the zombies. So we like to think that, we can keep the human race alive. That happens.
So interesting. And then why do you think that Aptera is really one of the only companies trying to do this? Because it just doesn't seem like something that, obviously there was the GM EV1, which was it was very aerodynamic, but it didn't go anywhere near the level that Aptera's vision extends to. But why do you think that no one really has been trying to do this?
Yeah, the EV1 was a great example of kind of wide-eyed innocence when the EV world started, and then the corporate overlords came in and crushed it down, and now it's just a much different, beast. I think that it's terribly hard to change your supply chain in the automotive world. So to shift from steel and aluminum over to composites is the first big hurdle. The second is you've got a lot of engineers in these big companies, and they all want to keep their jobs. So if you've drastically simplified your vehicles and made them out of different materials, you put a lot of people out of work, and, you're going to, not a lot of people aren't going to get their bonuses because they're they're not re-engineering door systems and crazy lift gates and stuff that other vehicle programs consist of. I think there's a lot of headwinds in traditional automotive because they have a supply chain that's just not like ours. And they have, it's kind of like software bloat. There's the whole bunch of engineers that just engineered all these different little software things, and they're all annoying and they all drive you crazy. And then, somebody comes out with something like Linux and, it's like pure and simple. And you're like, but all those guys at Microsoft are going to lose their jobs because, there's all these little bloat programs. The same thing kind of happens in the automotive industry. There's all these little things that people work on and things that the suppliers want to get into the vehicles. It's kind of this never ending death spiral for them. And, hopefully we're the voice of change that hopefully inspires the transportation industry to do things differently, but time will tell.
So it's interesting that you bring up the transportation industry as a whole, right? Because actually, I think your design and your vehicle fits into the larger picture of electrifying everything and the shift in transportation, more particularly in cities, right? Where more people are maybe biking, e-bikes and e-mobility, e-city bikes almost are becoming more popular. Do you think there's a place for Aptera in the world transportation revolution in that sense, rather than what's happening, I think, more nichely in America, which is big trucks and big tires and that sort of thing?
Yeah, it's right sizing transportation. And I think the younger generation you see is maybe embracing that a lot more than the older generation is. Car leasing is a lot more popular than car buying now. And I think people like the flexibility of, if I live in a big city, I don't need a car. I can take public transportation, I can use a bike, I can use a scooter. So getting rid of these terribly expensive devices that are also bad for the planet is something that we think is catching on. But it's right sizing the transportation. If you live in a city and you only need to go a mile a day, maybe a bike is perfect for you. Maybe hopping on the subway is perfect for you. Aptera really fits in that right sizing, in that if you have to commute 50 miles a day, what is the most efficient way for you to do that? It's not hopping in your SUV. So, if you could have something that's brutally efficient for the majority of your transportation, 67% of the mileage driven in California is driven with 2 passengers or less. So the vast majority of transportation could be handled by the Aptera, and it could be 20 times as efficient as a combustion vehicle driving on the same highway. So, we hope that people kind of, think a little harder about their transportation decisions and where they're spending their money. If they're going to buy a vehicle that's, $60,000 to $80,000, that's a hefty check. You got to pay for insurance to insure a $60,000 to $80,000 device. Wouldn't it be great if you get a $26,000 Aptera that has motorcycle insurance instead of automotive insurance, so it's even cheaper, and you're not paying for the fuel, so you're not dropping another $3,000 a year in gasoline. So, we think that people are thinking a lot more about their home purchases. People are thinking a lot more about their large appliance purchases, and people are certainly thinking a lot more about their transportation purchases these days.
And well, speaking of people here in America, and not to bring up politics, but I think regulatory policies have heavily influenced the EV industry in the last couple of years. I think there's no denying that, right? The $7,500 tax credits potentially going away. What do you think Aptera's position is in all of that? Are you well positioned because you are already on the lower end, and the $7,500 credit may not really matter to the customers that you're targeting, or they're going to have vast effects and you guys are really thinking about and preparing for it?
Yeah, in general, ending the subsidies to electric vehicles is great for us because we look better against other electric vehicles. Right now, we're classified as a motorcycle, so we don't even get that $7,500.
Yeah.
So just the equalization of other electric vehicles not getting the subsidies kind of aligns us a lot better. Obviously, we're getting 350 miles per gallon equivalent, burning a quarter of the energy per mile as the average EV. So if people were kind of considering, us compared to other EVs, you got $7,500 off one, they don't get it off us. So maybe that influences buying decisions more. But, right now we're in such a kind of rarefied space. We're really creating a new vehicle category. There's never been a vehicle that creates its own power before. This era it powers itself. It's a perpetual motion machine set in your driveway, ostensibly, if you drive less than 40 miles a day. So, we don't really feel we're in competition with any other EV companies. But, when you really think about it and, people are adding up the dollars, $7,500 is a pretty big chunk. And I think Tesla would benefit if those subsidies ended for Ford and GM. And I think we would benefit well too if those subsidies ended. We've always wanted to create a business model that didn't rely on government subsidies because they're unpredictable. Get somebody new elected, or something changes and those subsidies go away. That's no way to run a business. So we think we have a very compelling value proposition with our vehicle as it stands. And why should other people get subsidies if we don't?
I think that's a good way to position yourself to look, just because you're acknowledging that government subsidies are don't know where they're going to end up because they can change every 4 years. So I think that's interesting. Now, I kind of want to move this conversation a little more into the engineering side, because I think this is really interesting. And you brought this up earlier when you mentioned the production supply chain. So if you just look at the Aptera, it doesn't really share any components, I don't think, with any other normal vehicle on the road. So how are you, because this must be an entirely different supply chain than any other auto manufacturer would look at. So has this been more of a difficulty working with Aptera, or has this been kind of a benefit?
Surprisingly, there are a lot of automotive components in the Aptera. The battery cell is a 2170 NMC 811 cell, very similar cell to what's in the Tesla Model Y, what's in the Rivians, what's in the Lucids. So, in that, we make the most energy dense battery pack in the industry right now. But we use the base cell that a lot of other people are using. So, that helps that a lot of other people are using them because it makes it a commodity. It makes it much cheaper. Door latches, some of the safety mechanisms, airbags, window mechanisms, bearings for, the wheels, bushings, shocks, all that stuff is standard automotive. The Vitesco drive system that we're using has been in over 1 million vehicles, very automotive components. I would say that probably 70% of our bill of materials is traditional automotive componentry, or made in the traditional automotive way. The thing that we do different is we package it very, very differently. Build in sub-assemblies. We have this body structure that's made of only 6 components for the main body structure. It's very, very simple. We eliminate a lot of parts. I can't remember who said it, but the best engineering is to take away a part or take away a line of code, not to add a line of code or add a part. So we've been working with Sandy Monroe for 4 years now. He was an early investor in the company. He's a lean manufacturing expert. Monroe and Associates have done teardowns on all the major EV brands. So we've been able to learn from their decisions, over the last 4 or 5 years. And that's helped us simplify drastically the vehicle. So, our part count is much, much less. A good example is our wiring harness. We have this kind of IO architecture, a point of use architecture, where we have these control boards sprinkled around the vehicle. And to power those control boards, you just need a power, a ground, and a communication line. So our wiring harness ostensibly is 3 wires running around the vehicle to these different control boards. And then the control boards are very close to the components that they control. That's reduced the weight of our wiring harness from roughly 90 pounds down to about 30 pounds. So, eliminating parts, we only have 3 buttons in the interior. You got 2 buttons to open the doors, and you got 1 hazard button. That's a requirement. That means you've got less connectors to those buttons. The number one failure in new, devices, motorcycles and cars is connectors, the crimps for the wires to go in the connectors and actually making the connection properly when the wiring harness is connected. So if you can eliminate those connectors, it's just a lot better. So, working with Sandy Monroe, eliminating parts, lightweighting, building in sub-assemblies. Our interior is drastically more simple than a lot of other modern automotive interiors. So just take away. And then you end up with a vehicle that has a lot of traditional automotive components. It's just a third of what's in, a Toyota Camry.
Interesting. See, maybe I was thinking more on I probably should have specified it though, but I was thinking kind of more on like the manufacturing side, at least building the vehicle itself too. Because when you mention this modular technique, that sounds a lot different, I would say, than like how maybe a Equinox or something like that's made. So does that allow you to build it like in a smaller building? Is there any stuff along the manufacturing lines you can discuss?
Typical automotive factories bring in roll steel. They put those rolls of steel into presses and turn them into body panels. Then they have robots weld those body panels together. Then they take those body panels through a dip tank to paint them, and they assemble them on the other side. It takes a lot of space, takes a lot of energy. The way that we make our body panels is they're pressed composites, carbon fiber SMC. sheet molding compound goes into a mold. It's kind of like a waffle iron, closes, heats it up to 160 C-ish, then opens up 8 minutes later and bam, you've got your part. In that we don't have any welding. Managing the raw material inputs is a lot easier. And, when you go to actually build the whole vehicle together, all the parts are human positionable. They're super lightweight and they just get bonded, adhered, glued together. So versus a welding shop where you've got lots of welding and painting, the emissions from our, build process is just much, much less. About 80% of the emissions from a modern automotive plant is just from the paint shop. So we don't paint any of our parts. All of our parts are either colored in mold or they get a sticker after. So, when you get your Aptera, if you have a launch edition Aptera, it'll have a silver Luna sticker on the outside. Peel that sticker off, put red, white, Hello Kitty, your favorite Gucci.
So like a wrap
on there. Yeah. So it's a wrap for all the parts. And the wraps are much more environmentally friendly the way they're made. And we don't have any CapEx to support a paint shop. By using the wrap. About half of your CapEx for a modern automotive plant comes just in your paint shop. So, when you design an automotive plant, you design the paint shop first, you design everything else around it.
Interesting. That is so cool. So the manufacturing process of Aptera, you would say, is probably a lot more environmentally friendly than traditional vehicles.
Wait.
And so you guys are building a brand new car company from scratch, 0 to 1. It's really, really hard to do. I think Fisker's failure has shown how hard it is to do, right? I'm just curious what your thoughts are in terms of that process, not having dealers, for instance. I don't know if you plan on using dealers. That's been a controversial thing with EVs and new EV companies and service, because, you're talking about having a composite body. Composite bodies don't really bend, they shatter. And so doing any body work, I'm sure, is going to be quite difficult once they're out there on the road and things happen, right?
Well, I think I'd have to correct you in the beginning. We're not starting a new car company, nor do we want to start a car company, but we're a new vehicle company and building in a very different way. You have seen a lot of catastrophes in the EV space over the last 5 years, and we largely feel it's because they've taken a very automotive approach to the way they've designed and they're building the vehicle. And those are high CapEx efforts. It costs a lot of money to launch a new car. When Toyota or Ford launches a new car, it's anywhere from $3 to $5 billion to launch a new car. Smaller companies like Fisker try to do it with less, but still burn through $6 billion and then don't have a viable path to actually selling the vehicle, and having the kind of quality you want. It's a sad occasion to see stuff like that happen. And they are the only ones. Lots of money has been burnt on aspiring to enter the automotive landscape as a car company. But entering the automotive landscape as a vehicle company is a totally different thing. And, we've designed this vehicle from scratch to be much, different, to be built different, to have a lot lower CapEx. And, it's just a much easier way to launch a company like ours. We're not a four-wheeled vehicle. We're a motorcycle. We don't have to have the kind of third-party validated compliance that four-wheeled vehicles have. A lot of companies get caught up in actually launching their vehicle, spend another year and just getting the sign-offs to sell the vehicles. You can come to the Aptera shop tomorrow. I can sell you one of the vehicles that are on the floor. You can go to the DMV. You can get a license plate for it tomorrow. You can call Progressive Insurance and get insurance on it, be driving it that day. So, we don't have those kind of hurdles as a vehicle company versus a car company. And, the automotive dealership network is broken. That model shouldn't exist nowadays with EVs. The only way they made money was on service. There's a lot of service on combustion vehicles. An electric vehicle today, like a Tesla, has a fifth of the service of what a traditional combustion vehicle has. We're going to have far less service needs than a Tesla because we're simpler. We don't have a lot of connectors. We don't have a lot of extras in the vehicle. Very simple drivetrain, 1,000,000-mile service brake life. When you add all those up, you get a very low kind of warranty need. So what's a dealer going to do? He sells you an Aptera and he doesn't see you for 10 years. That's a weird thing to have happen. So go to any car dealership today that's selling EVs and combustion vehicles and ask them how they feel about the EVs. And they'll say they suck. They don't make us any money. Our service department doesn't ever have them come in. I don't know why they even brought these stupid electric vehicles to our dealership. That's why you see other brands like spinning off kind of EV brands. You got Jaguar turning into an all EV company. because you can't really share combustion and EV. It just doesn't make sense. If you're going to start from scratch, you'd choose one or the other. So, we started from scratch to build the most efficient vehicle. We didn't start with a market study that told us how many cup holders to put into an SUV, what colors to make it, how aggressive to make the headlights, so it, made people happy. It's a brutal execution of first principles engineering to see how to use the least amount of energy per mile. And then you try to wrap it in as pretty a package, functional package as possible. And that's what we've done. That's why the shape is so unique and so different than anything else out there. And I think, we'll be driving down the road and we'll certainly get a lot of attention because there's nothing else out there like the Aptera. No other solar powered spaceships rolling around today. We'll be the only one.
Yeah, I have to say, when I was in San Francisco and I saw, I think, one of your test vehicles out there on the road, it definitely stood out, and in a cool way, for sure. I'm curious though, if you're taking a really different approach. You talked about Sandy Munro, huge fan of his, by the way. I think he really does a nice detailed view of the choices and the trade-offs of the manufacturing process and parts. What's your process of collecting feedback from, say, your reservation holders, your investors, that helps inform the decision to be where you are and in the unique position that you guys are in?
We love our community and we love that they're behind our mission to bring solar mobility to the masses. But to be honest, we don't focus group. We don't, kind of put up design decisions for committee review. And, that's just not our thing. We're trying to eke out every ounce of weight we can. We're trying to get the best rolling resistance we can. We're trying to take all the friction, out of our drivetrain components. We're trying to make every aerodynamic tweak we can while still keeping it relatively comfortable and functional. And you can easily get drug into, this thing would sell better if it was more like a Toyota Camry. If you had a third seat, if this was a 5-seater and it had easy ingress and, maybe a hatch in the back and eventually end up with a Pontiac Aztek, that's just kind of the natural of things, and when you end up with a Pontiac Aztek, we saw what happens. Nobody wants it. When you try to make everybody happy, nobody's happy. And we've kind of gone about this mission to build the most efficient transportation. And it's a very unique business model. I'm kind of a serial entrepreneur. This is my 9th company. So I speak a lot about, my different companies and try to help other entrepreneurs. But one of the very unique things about our business model and kind of our business path was there was no minimum viable product for us. There was no product market fit for us. We were going to build the most efficient vehicle ever. And we hope that people liked it. We could be in a position where we only built 50 of these things a year. But we launched it to the public. People got really excited. We had 4,000 orders in the first couple of weeks. Now we have almost 50,000 orders for the Aptera. So, people love it, but it wasn't that we asked people what they wanted and then tried to build that. We built the most efficient thing. And then we said, hey, do you like the most efficient thing? We like it. We hope that you like it too. And luckily we've had a very supportive community, but it's a very different business model. And we've gone to, a lot of investment banks and consultants and people, and they're like, where's your SWOT analysis and, your score? Where's your product market fit? I was like, no, that's not us. We didn't do that. We don't want that. We want to build the most efficient transportation possible. And this is it. This is it. This is it. This is it. Okay. This is what the world needs. We know the world needs it. And I think Steve Jobs, did a very good job about that. People don't know what they want until you give it to them. And we know the world needs this. So we're happy that people like it.
That's good. And yeah, because I was thinking in my head the whole time about that Steve Jobs quote, because that does really reflect what you guys are doing now. But kind of bouncing off this community, because the Aptera community, there's so many people who really love the product. I think they really want one in their garage. But how long is it going to be until one of these eager reservation holders will get one? Because obviously manufacturing a vehicle is very difficult. There's so much involved, and I don't want to understate that. But do we have any timelines now for when production Apteras will be on the road?
Well, sadly, with any startup, most things on your timeline are funding dependent and independent too. We just relaunched our crowdfunding, which we think will have a great success. We're going to CES to show off our first production intent vehicles.
Ooh, cool.
And we hope that we're on a path to raise significant capital over the next 6 months. And that puts us on a timeline to start production in 2025 and then kind of see production in 2026. So, we have a fully designed vehicle. It just needs to go through validation, crash testing, that sort of stuff, durability testing. But it's really the expensive tools that we need to start production. So the castings for the suspension parts and stuff like that are expensive. So wrangling $60 million in capital, it's a big number. It's not big in automotive terms, but it's a big number. We're hoping that we inspire people over the next 2 or 3 months, especially at CES, to believe in our path. And, hopefully we get to stand out more and more against other, EV people, and, our order numbers will just continue to grow. Eventually it's going to break. It's like, how many people got to want this thing before, we think that $2 billion, worth of reservations would inspire somebody to be like, hey, I want to hop on that revenue train. So, our time is coming. And, the only thing that really happens to us is if the capital comes in slowly, it just slows down, when we're actually producing volume vehicles. But it will happen, it will either trickle along and, kind of happen slowly into 2026, or somebody will step up at CES. And there's lots of strategics and rich people at CES that could stroke a $60 million check at the event, then just deposit it account, and we're off to the races. So, I see big deals happen all the time. So it's just inspiring that one right person.
Interesting. And now, I mean, the thing is just the vehicle itself, it can just attract so many people. And I'm sure it being at CES will be such a great opportunity, because it's one vehicle that is truly efficient, but it's also very good looking, because you get some vehicles that kind of focus too much on the efficiency side and you're like, but this one just ends up looking, it just works perfectly.
Yeah, Jason Hill has done an amazing job in adding the industrial design to our mathematical shape. So the shape could never change, but you could change a lot of what underlies the exterior shape of the vehicle. So it feels great on the interior of the new production vehicles. It's got tons of space. It certainly looks cool. Butterfly doors, stand out a lot. And if you're driving the thing in traffic, there's just nothing else like it. So that's going to have to be a warning to a lot of our early owners, is you're going to have to be a defensive driver, because everybody's going to have their camera out. Everybody's going to be taking video. Everybody's going to be trying to say hi to you. And, that could lead to some traffic accidents behind you. The carnage in the wake of the Aptera driving down the city roads.
Maybe your progressive insurance will go up after that. But what I do want to talk about,
as long as they don't run into you.
Yeah. Now, as we kind of wrap this up, I want to talk with the next steps of Aptera. So a lot of companies do interesting strategies with launching vehicles. Like you had a lot of companies usually have like a launch edition, which you reference. Now, at least in terms of like battery capacity, because there were still 4 battery capacities. You had the 250, 400, and 1,000. Is there a specific version or variant that's going to be released first, at least with batteries and drivetrains, or how is Aptera planning this? And what is the first one going to look like?
The first one will be the Luna exterior and the Codex interior. So it's kind of like an orange interior. We'll build at least probably 5,000 of those. So all Luna silver on the outside. They'll all have 45 kilowatt hour battery packs, 42 kilowatt hours usable. Gets about 400 miles of range. So, we picked the 400 mile range because that was the most popular by far people selected. We chose to go with the full solar. So you get the full solar package. That's the hood, the dash, the roof, and the rear hatch. 92 cells. Gives you about 700 watts of peak power. And that peak power goes right into your battery pack every day. Gets you about 40 miles of range every day in the Southern California sun. 11,000 miles of free driving a year in Southern California. In Seattle, you get more like 8,500. New York, you get like 8,500. If you live in Ireland, you're probably going to be just south of 8,000, but it's not a very big island, so you can't go very far in Ireland anyways. So terribly useful range, even if you live in a more inclement space. And we want to build as many of those as we can. And then we'll start to offer the 250 mile range and maybe different colors. Then we'll offer the 600 mile range and the 1,000 mile range last. The 1,000 mile range needs a little bit different suspension components because it's heavier. And the belly pan's got to be a little different because the battery pack's kind of fat, hangs out of the belly a little bit. So you got to hangs out like, I think it's 30 millimeters. You got to have a little bubble. Can't really see it from a distance, but
You could have like some cool fish themed models, you know? You got the little guy, the medium guy, and the big fat fish.
big
Yeah,
bass.
fat boy. Yeah, the big bass.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the body shape is actually very similar to a bullnose shark when it swims along the seafloor. Something nature figured out millions of years ago was that as you swim close to the seafloor, if you put a hump in your back, it actually speeds up fluid to your tail, and it sucks the pressure zone out from your nose. So if you flat body, that high pressure zone in front of your nose has nowhere to go. So you just got to plow through it. But you camber your back a little bit and it swoops up the air. So you can kind of see the flow lines on the vehicle behind me there. That's the idea behind the Aptera is kind of there's this vacuum force that sucks the air at higher velocity to the rear of the vehicle. And that neutralizes the blunt force of your nose of your vehicle. This whole vehicle's so aerodynamic that it's actually more aerodynamic than the side view mirrors on pickup trucks today. If you're driving down the freeway and you put two hands out your window, the pressure you feel on your two hands is about the total aerodynamic drag of the Aptera.
that's insane. And just when you mentioned earlier, the battery size too. So like 42 kilowatt hour usable, but 400 miles of range. Just hearing that is just like, wow, that's incredible. Just because it's redefining what a vehicle is. And I like that so much.
Well, it's also the number one cost driver in an EV is the battery pack. So if you wanted to put another battery pack in a vehicle that could get you 400 miles of range, you're probably paying 20 to 25 grand just for the battery pack. You know, we're paying 5 to 6 grand for our battery pack. Still goes 400 miles. So, you know, it's a much better place to be if you want to sell a cost efficient vehicle to have it be really efficient.
And what was the price point again on the launch edition model? It was in the $30,000 range.
Base vehicle is still in the $26,000 range, and if you put all the options on to get 1,000 mile, you're up in the $45,000 range.
Okay, cool. And yeah, I guess before we wrap this up, one final question is, what is Aptera's role in shaping the future of the automobile?
You know, we think it is showing the industry and the world that efficiency matters, that if you make your vehicles more efficient, everything gets better. So we hope that we inspire the industry to get lighter weight, to be more aerodynamic, to have more efficient powertrains. And if you do that, you know, every bit of efficiency matters. It's less rare earths out of the ground. It's less copper and aluminum and magnesium out of the earth. You know, just we all become much better stewards of our energy use and our planet by doing that. So, you know, we will inspire the industry with our success. So the more vehicles we have on the road, the better it is. And we hope to have over 1 million Aptera on the road by 2033. You know, it took Aptera a decade, so we hope to do it a little quicker.
Well, I look forward to that day very much. And regarding Aptera, for people who are interested in checking out the company, it's aptera.us for the website. And you also have a YouTube series, correct?
We've got tons of YouTube videos. If you want to waste a couple days on your holiday, just search Aptera on YouTube. There's tons and tons of channels that cover us. There's tons and tons of videos, and our channel is great with content. So we'd love for more people to subscribe to it.
Are you guys doing demo drives at CES this year, or are you plan on doing like media rush? Yeah,
we'll running vehicle there. We'll probably give media drives. So on media drives at CES. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll be on the lookout. If anyone's interested, be on the lookout at CES 2025 in about a month. Is that right?
Yeah, we'll be outside of CES. We've got a great booth. The design's coming together. You know, it's mostly about how do we get as many people to see the vehicle as possible. We're hoping to have a lot of Aptera people there and Aptera green shirts. And hopefully everybody at the show will take notice. Like, holy crap, there's so many Aptera people here. So that's the goal, to get the general audience and the general tech world knowledgeable on what Aptera is.
Sounds good. And Chris, thank you very much for joining the podcast today. It was great talking with you, and we're looking forward to the day we can take a ride in Aptera.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, David. Have a good day.
Appreciate it.